Hello guys, I am Tom and welcome to Ecologic Gecko. So this channel is all about documenting the life of my single adult male leopard gecko who is called Mr. Jinx. And the aim of this setup is to, as much as possible, replicate a slice of their wild habitat in Pakistan, an area known as the Potar Plateau and Salt Hill Range. So the design of this setup features plants which also grow in their wild habitat, daylight, so trying to replicate the daylight in their wild habitat through this reptile lighting that I have here, and also a little bit with the soil as well. Okay. Now just a quick run through of the setup. So I have a large glass terrarium, which is about, I think, 90 centimeters by 60 centimeters height by 45 centimeter width. It's a mesh lid, Habitat brand. There's all sorts of different kind of brands on terrariums, but size is important. And why is that? Well, it allows more enrichment opportunities for the gecko, and also they can choose their own temperature gradient between the warmer side and the cooler side. Okay, and when you add more clutter and decor and live plants and live soil, rocks and so on, it contributes to like mini microclimates, which all combined create this captive wild sort of like habitat for your gecko. And leopard geckos are a rugged species. They're hardy, so they are used to a range of climates really in their wild habitat and range of humidity. So in their wild habitat, for a period in the year, I think it's from about June to August, there is a monsoon season, which increases the humidity. So the hot humid nights draw the leopard geckos out of their burrows and hiding places, and do their crepuscular type activities and nocturnal activities, and then in the daytime their behavior is to hide all day, but they can sometimes explore during the day. So say if they want to move from a cold spot to a warm spot, or vice versa, or just need a bit of extra humidity for shedding, then it can be they can explore during the day as well, in order to find their sort of ideal conditions. Okay, so from top to bottom, I have the basking reflector light here with a tungsten halogen bulb. That is controlled by a dimming thermostat, which is over here, and because we're in winter in the northern hemisphere, the setting is on the lowest temperature setting, and then as we approach spring, that dial will gradually go up, which will gradually warm up the enclosure. Okay. So I don't have my terrarium set at the same temperature or same lighting in the daytime. It changes according to the seasons. Okay, and that is also beneficial to the plants, right? Because all the plants in here are live, and in the winter time, which is now, they go a bit more dormant, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. in a bit, okay? So that's the lighting. Then I have my Jungle Dawn LED plant grow lights and UVB. The reason they're placed sort of slightly half on and half off a little platform there, which is just a wooden frame with a piece of acrylic plastic underneath, is because I vary my lighting, like I say, according to the season. So as we're in the second half of January now, it is getting a little bit brighter. So the lights are giving off more brightness into the enclosure. Early January, first half of January, those lights were fully on that frame, and the basking light would just gently dim on subtly if the temperatures went below around 15 Celsius. Okay. Then in the summer, I have another plant LED grow light which I add in, which covers much of the top of the mesh lid, and then the Jungle Dawns and UVB get switched to the side of that plant grow light, so then there is a full spectrum of light going in. Okay, so why does the light change throughout the seasons? Okay, so I want to make this interactive now. Comment below why you think daylight changes. So like, why are the daylight hours longer in summer and shorter in the winter? Comment below with your thoughts. My theory is, if we think of the Earth and it rotates, which creates our days. So in a 24-hour period, the Earth spins, yeah? And when it spins away from the sun, that gives our nighttime activity darkness, okay? And when it spins facing the sun, we have daylight, okay? Also, as the Earth orbits around the sun, it takes about 365 days to fully orbit around the sun, which is a year. And whilst it is orbiting, it is also tilting, okay? Tilting at a slight angle. So when it tilts, so in the northern hemisphere, we get our summer in June, July and August, whereas in the southern hemisphere it is winter time at that time of the year, June, July and August. And that is because the Earth tilts slightly at an angle, and in order to get summer it has to tilt towards the sun, which makes the sun's light more intense, okay? Hence why we get longer days in summer. Contrastingly, in the winter, the Earth tilts away from the sun, which means that it is more darker, less intensity of light, which links to animals and organisms, including plants, to go into a sort of dormancy period. Now, comment below what you think is meant by dormancy. What is winter dormancy to you? Yeah? And if your leopard gecko is in a sort of dormant period, if you're noticing your leopard gecko hiding a lot and eating a lot less, then it is probably due to this winter dormancy, okay? Even if your lighting is set at the same setting every day throughout the year, but your gecko still goes dormant for a period, could be a couple of weeks or even a couple of months or longer. This is because outside the light changes, yeah? So the light outside gets darker in the winter, which means it also gets colder because of the less intense light and heat coming from the infrared rays of the sun Okay. Now, heat also is generated from other wavelengths of the sun, including visible light and UVB. So, in the wintertime, if that light is less intense, then obviously the temperatures are going to get cooler, right? So that probably explains why your gecko is going dormant, because there is less intensity of light from outside. So even if your lighting setting doesn't follow like a climate plan or a seasonal plan, it's just that it comes on at a set time in the morning, goes off at a set time in the evening. Some keepers in the summertime, they'll have their lights on for 12 hours a day. And then from, say, about November, December, they'll switch to about 10 hours a day. Other keepers turn their lighting and heating off during the winter time for a short period, which does also save a bit on electricity and gives the setup a bit of a break. But if you, say, keep your lighting setup on a more static setting, but they still hibernate and you start worrying, it's completely normal. There's no need to worry, because they can sense the conditions outside. It's probably the outside light that is triggering their dormancy. Okay? And dormancy, so lower light intensity, also triggers off a lower metabolic rate. So their metabolism slows down, which makes their energy levels less. So you will notice that they become less active. Okay? Eat less. Now leopard geckos store their body fats and reserves in their tail. So through the winter, their glucose levels and fats are stored, so their liver capacity increases to store more glucose and fats, which they use as their winter food reserves. Okay, and that's what they basically live off when they go dormant. Okay, and then come spring and summer, when the rays of sunshine become brighter and more intense and warmer, that's when they start becoming more active, which links to them being cold-blooded. So they seek out the rays of sunshine to warm themselves up in order to become more active, and you know, it aids their well-being as well. Okay, so that is my theory from doing my own research on winter dormancy and leopard geckos going dormant. Let me know in the comments below what you think winter dormancy is. And do your geckos go through this period in the winter time? I'd like to know. So let me know in the comments below. Now, insects, do they go dormant? Well, let's have a little look. We're going to have a little bug hunt now whilst I'm here, right? Let's have a little look. Now, last night I did notice there was a dubia roach hanging around. The other day there was a male cricket warming up on the slate ledge over there. I've noticed the odd mealworm. But compared to autumn, spring and summer, I have noticed now that there is a lot less darkling beetles around. They're normally rummaging around, but since the winter time they haven't been, and they go into a sort of dormancy period as well. So a lot of bugs do go dormant in the winter, and it's just part of their life cycle. And if you think about the exposure to light, which I was telling you about earlier, so if, you know, the exposure to sunlight is less in the winter, the photoperiod, which is just that, the exposure to sunlight of a living organism in a 24-hour period, that is photoperiod. So if that is less in the winter, then they're getting less wavelengths, the less rays of sunshine, which affects their metabolisms and activity physiologically and also their behavior. So if that is less in the winter, then that triggers off them going into more like a sluggish slow mode. Okay, same with humans. In the middle of December up until the start of January, first week of January, second week of January even, I go through this, what they call SAD, it's seasonal affective disorder. I feel really lethargic and I eat more and I just want to sleep. And even though, even in work, I work outdoors, but say we sit down and have lunch and I'm almost falling asleep in my chair. And then I have to go for a walk outside to wake me up again, and then I'm fine again. And that is because of the less exposure to light. Okay? Now, if you think, from sunlight, we get vitamin D, and so do reptiles. They get vitamin D through the UVB element, which is why it is so important to provide UVB in all our reptile and amphibian enclosures, even if they're nocturnal. They can still get elements of light. Even say my leopard gecko, Mr. Jinx, he's hiding in his log hide in the corner there. Now one could argue, well, it's dark in there, so what's the point in providing UVB or even light in general? Well, even though they're in there, they're still getting access to some light, okay? And because leopard geckos are crepuscular by nature, they don't need that much UVB, so therefore they only need low intensities of UVB, which links to Dr. Francis Baines' UVI chart, which I would recommend looking up on Google. Okay, so it is important to provide UVB as ethical keepers trying to replicate their natural environment and replicate the natural sunlight. Okay, so there's a lot to take in there, a lot to take in. So I was going to do a little bug hunt. Right, let's have a look under this little pine cone here, see if we can notice any activity. Not really much happening there that I can see. Now there are earthworms in the soil, but because they mostly live probably 99% of the time in soil, they don't get much access to light. So their activity is still pretty active now. Notice there's a couple of earthworms in there, little babies. And there'll also be microorganisms in that soil as well. Okay. That's another video, future video, about the soil and the sort of activity within the soil which benefits the plants. Okay. Let's have another little bug hunt. Let's have a look. What have we got under this piece of wood here? There might be something going on here if I lift this up. It's difficult to see in the dark. There's not very much going on. But insects do go dormant. They slow down in the winter because of the lower intensity of light, which impacts on the cooler temperature. Okay, it's like in our summer. If you walk in the park in the middle of summer, or let's say May in spring, that's saying the darling buds of May, everything's all lush and green and fresh, and life is kind of like coming back, yeah, from winter dormancy. So when you walk in a park, you notice there's loads of birds singing in the trees, flying around, lots of flies, midges, insects. Life is just buzzing, yeah. And then you go for a walk in the park in the middle of January, and you may get, it may be so really cold. There might be snow on the ground. Daylight lengths are much shorter. The trees are bare with leaves if you're in winter time. So there's a lot less activity, isn't there? So that links to what I was saying about the shorter day lengths and longer day lengths, okay? So light is a big influencer in life on Earth and life in this terrarium.